On my way out of Visage, one thing caught my ear. I'd heard tales of it. The fungal coral that rose from the bottom of the sea. A place, a stronghold, where very few men entered, and even fewer left. The Fathom King's Keep. The monstrous nightmare who was said to rule the sea and have kin with the monsters. My father had made dealings with him. Perhaps he would know of my father, or if nothing else, perhaps he would prove some interesting inspiration. I tried to enter, but apparently I was lacking experience. The king will only enter if you can tell him a story that interests him. So I fled, with nothing better to show for it. There were eels in the realm around the Promised Sea, where the Drownies and the Fathom King hold. So I left, and made my way to Shepherd's Isle, a place of crazy folk and madmen, though their interesting talk did leave me with a few unique ideas. They said that snuffers were hiding in Visage, that they skinned those that they killed and wore them as faces, and then wore masks over their own faces. They ate candles and rats, and were very fond of taking life and hiding in crews. My own crew were scared witless, but I knew for a fact none of these men were snuffers. They didn't have the guile for it, and none of the others I'd taken. They were a bit too experienced to be taken in. I found him out with an odd sigil on his head. I spoke to him. He'd lost all his memory, and the sigil seemed to be the one eating it. He scratched it till he bled when I gave him some food, and then begged me to take him to a place, a lonely house covered in candles, the Chapel of Lights. If I'm headed out there, perhaps I will. He's now become a backup first navigator. The Carnelian exile does her job well, but I don't know if I trust her. I found a tiny research station. It looked seemingly abandoned, but there were plenty of people there, just hiding. It was clandestine and unwelcome. I made note of it. Perhaps the Admiralty would be interested in my findings. Close to the station was Abbey Rock, where the Sisterhood resides. Like the nuns of the Isle of Cats, they did their own business. These trained with blades, weapons. They laid out traps for the unwary. They were welcoming enough of news and supplies, but they were also hostile. Do not meddle with the sisters. Finally I found my way to Gator's Morn, the Isle of the Neath. They shift, and they come, and they go, and they ebb, and they flow. But pirates are pirates always. I found the home of these pirates, the place where they would hang their hats, and I found the Admiralty's spy. The little fool demanded payment for his information. Still, easier to give it to him than to cause trouble here, especially with my own crew a little low in numbers. I decided that I would be able to make it even more valuable. He had given me information about the Khanate and the Fathom King. Using my knowledge of the Z, I managed to put two and two together and come up with something truly valuable for the Admiralty. While I was there, I decided to try a street vendor's food. It was unusual. The taste was tonic, not quite delicious, but very rich in flavor, very different. I recognized it from something I'd had a long time ago. My father brought me a treat from Venderbite. Tyrant moth antenna, the great giant moth that prowled the Z far to the north. Who knows how he got one, but it made me feel truly alive again. I saw the pirates coming and going and decided to report on them to the Admiralty. They would not stop it, but perhaps they would pay me for my trouble. To the east, one of my scouts discovered Port Cecil, a place built upon living coral, where wise men and fools alike gather. I decided I might try and gather some schlintock there. The coral was lustrous and alive, though as we gathered, one of my sailors went nearly mad. It was almost as if I could hear the coral calling out to me. I took one, just one piece, and then headed back to port. They love their chess games in Cecil, and I happen to be quite a dapper hand with it myself. I decided that I would play, and play I did, game after game. God only knows how many days passed, but eventually I defeated all the great champions there, and apparently there was only one trial left. I went to a strange grotto where a waterfall and a chessboard was set up. I made my move, and a gash opened up in my arm. The coral itself wanted my help for a game, to put an end to its existence, and to do so, it gave me a gift. A rubbery man rose from the depths. his forehead glowing with an unusual light, like the slintock I had already taken. I don't know what to think of the rubbery men. Their Z-like appearance, the tentacled face, the dark green skin. But then it actually spoke. Sloth lions! Sloth lions! It was unusual to say the least, but it wanted to go to the salt lions. They were near enough to London, provided I could find them. Perhaps I'd be able to make use of him. If nothing else, he seemed to have a dapper hand at the cookery. We had not had a good meal in days. As our outcast, the Narcissus one, cooked, we managed to take port at Demio Island. I can't say I'm wild about the place. It's full of mushrooms, though that does mean there's good tea and good wine there. The factor of the island had us together. He gave us supplies, told us of our time. It was good to see a man so welcoming, though he did seem a bit unhinged. Without visitors, no doubt he'd go completely mad. He told me of a restaurant in Venderbite, of one of the tomb colonists being a great chef with a great flavor. Unusual, but not unheard of. I decided I too would check this out when I had my time. Finally, I returned with Fallen London. I gave my information to the Admiral, the valuable, vital information. He gave me a great many echoes in return, and told me of the voracious diplomat, a strange one-eyed woman who I happened to meet only a short time later. She did her best for London, but was not a part of the Foreign Affairs Office. She was no diplomat. She was a strategist, and she worked for the Admiralty. Perhaps she would help me if I had any more information to give. Ironically, the Admiral burned my Station 3 report. It was unusual, to say the least. Very unnerving. He brought one of the masters of the bazaar in to watch. I was told to speak no more of it, and knowing my business, I spoke no more. The man with the one eye and the sharp knife came back. The blind brute wanted me to ferry souls across the Great Z to Palmerston. I knew the way. Why not? After all, he had given me that supplies to help me through. I began to grow a little weary, all those lonely nights in my home. So, I caroused in the Wolfstack docks looking for love, romance, or perhaps just company. It was time, I decided, for a little bit of a change, so I visited the Clathermont and got an eye tattooed on my arm. It was so lifelike you could see it move. My crew may have been a bit unhinged, but I? You need all the eyes you can get on the Z. Everything watching out for the right path. So I was a little bit relieved. I rested in my home and prepared for the following day, for we shipped out in the morning.